think we're going live here. Let's see. I think we are live. I'm going to cue up a little music to set the tone and relieve my anxiety because the topic today is going to be a little bit more challenging. So here we go. Alright, that's right guys, we are going to be talking about sex today. That's right. And I don't know if I could say that on on TikTok. Welcome everyone. If this is your first time here, my name is Tina. I am a happiness coach. And I come on here, normally it's at 9 p.m. I will be back on at 9 p.m. But I wanted to do a special training because I have additional stuff. And it was just too much to go over all of the stuff today. So just cutting out the music there. So what we're going to go over today is a bunch of different things around, of course, if you've been through sexual abuse, there is a component of healing sexually afterwards. And that's something that's a little uncomfortable to talk about. I also want to talk about obesity and how that is connected with sexual abuse and healing some of that stuff. So we're going to be getting a little bit more spiritual today and covering some of these things. So, and this got inspired because I woke up from a dream of somebody that I knew, and they were actually body shaming me in the dream. And because of my size, the obesity and stuff like that, and they were just being very crass. And in the dream, I was like, what the hell? Like, you know, and I haven't heard from this person or thought of this person for quite a while. And so if there's somebody out there sending any spiritual attacks, stay the fuck out of my dreams because you don't belong there, especially if you're there to cause harm. And the patterns that had happened in the dream were very symbolic of sexually abusive men that because he was doing the body shaming of me, he was like putting me down because of my body shape and size. And but at the same time, there was also an undertone of an attraction there as well, and wanting to make it about me, which is something that is very typical of an abuser. An abuser and the abusers that I've been subjected, had experienced, they would often do things where they would be the attraction, they'd want to do things, and then they would find a way to turn it around and find a way to blame me for it. So because of those experiences that I've had, I am able to spot that in men, even if they do not overtly display those characteristics, that there's something underlying and there's an energy and you can feel that vibe. And so a lot of these things of when you're going through the healing process, you may start to recognize patterns of different people that have been in your lives. I know today, and I'm going to go through this in my story more at 9, I'm going to share a bit more of my personal story and the timeline so that you have a little bit better understanding of what I've went through and what I've experienced, and I'm going to share that perspective so that in hopes that it reaches somebody to know that you're not alone in what you've experienced and that there is possibility to get help. Okay, so I want to talk about obesity because a lot of times when we've experienced sexual abuse, it will affect us physically and it affects us in our bodies, and oftentimes carrying excess fat is a way to have armor to protect ourselves. And I picked this up when I was first starting to become an online coach and wanting to help people with this, because I think this is really the most valuable gift that you can give somebody is be able to help them heal the stuff that is holding them back. And that means having some very difficult conversations about some very sensitive topics. And having a safe place to do that is extremely important. And I'll share more in my story tonight, but just because there are certain professionals, psychiatrists, therapists, or whatever, I'm not knocking them, and I highly recommend therapy if that's what you feel that you need. I know I've been fortunate with a couple of good ones, and I've also experienced some very bad ones that just did not help. So it can be a challenge to find the right person that you can feel comfortable enough to actually open up and talk about what you've been through. So as I was doing some of the studying, I had come across the book, The Body Keeps the Score. Sorry, I can't remember the name of the author. But it had talked about how war veterans with PTSD had very similar characteristics to all of these women that they were doing a weight loss study on. And then they found out that those women that had been carrying excess weight, every single one of them had gone through sexual abuse. So this is where the concept of complex PTSD came from, and started to understand some of those things. So now when I got to thinking about this stuff this morning, I realized that there's some very different approaches with men losing weight and women losing weight. And men, they just can drop it easier. Their bodies are not designed to carry that kind of weight. Women were kind of designed to hang on to everything. So it is a little bit more challenging. That being said, I think there's also different reasons of why men maybe carry extra weight. And I want to share some of that perspective and see if it resonates with you, okay? And then also the approach more from a spiritual and psychological standpoint for taking off the weight. I'm not going to talk to you about macros or gym routines or any of that kind of stuff, but this is more like a perspective and a thought process of how to look at this problem, because clearly obesity is a huge issue in at least North America, right? Canada, US. So when we think of obesity in men, I'm just going to write on the board. One of these days, this... Come on. All right. So I've got some cute cards here. So obesity in men, so these are correlations or connections with potential areas of where you may need to heal some trauma. So if you are in therapy, looking at these particular areas may actually give you something to focus on and to at least explore, okay? So this is why I'm sharing this. So men that carry a lot of excess weight, they often have experienced an abusive and rageful father. So oftentimes what will happen is, in effort to prevent to be like the father, they repress their emotions using food as a tool. Okay. Number 2 would be an overly emotional / needy mother. So, and if you have this combination where you have an abusive and rageful father, overly emotional, needy mother, especially if you're a man, so this is for men, what's going to happen in this dynamic in the family home is the mother is probably going to turn to the son and expect them to carry the emotional burden of the father. Okay? And then, of course, number 3 would be a man experiencing sexual abuse or sexual repression. This often happens if there is unexpressed concerns with homosexuality and not wanting to acknowledge those kind of things. So a way to cope is to have excess food to deal with that emotional trauma that's coming in behind that. So, and some of this stuff is kind of like carried through. And if you want in biblical terms, it's kind of like the sins of the father are carried on the son, right? Okay, so that's for men, and I'm going to cover a little bit more in depth. Let's go over the part with women. Let's see this one. So, women. Women, the main reasons. And of course, these aren't extensive lists, okay? These are more, like, I'm not a doctor, I'm not any of these kind of things. These are my observations. These are things that when I've talked with people that I've seen commonalities. So, I mean, go ahead and blow up my chat if you want of like, no, Tina, that's not right. This is, that's not scientifically proven. Please go ahead, share that kind of stuff. I welcome those conversations, okay? So, sexual abuse, number one. And that doesn't mean just childhood sexual abuse. There could be something that happens in a work environment, with a friend, rape, any of those kind of things. If there's some sort of sexual inappropriateness, okay, that can happen. That's number two, sexual inappropriateness. So, for example, if, say, a woman works in a male-dominated environment and they're always constantly cracking jokes of, about a woman's body and stuff like that, and it makes her feel uncomfortable, but she kind of has to stay in that environment, what she might do is turn to food as a way to suppress those emotions and to deal with what she's going through in that, okay? Number three would be abusive, jealous, either mother or other females. And this would happen as a way to cope with not wanting to appear sexually attractive, to put that armor on to show that they're not a threat. So these are kind of things of different ways that they get tied to coping mechanisms, and then there's an emotional component, and then being able to unravel all of this stuff is key. So men will often, in their circumstances, their focus is more out of trying to deny that they are not like their abusive father. They are not, if they have an emotionally needy mother or they've had to step in and fill the surrogate role of a father, then what ends up happening is they may compensate by, if a man appears softer, physically, weight-wise, right? If he's softer, he's a little bit weaker, and then therefore it may prevent the mom from depending on him as much, okay? So a man can carry excess weight. And these, of course, are very complex situations, and it's hard to be able to articulate all of this in a short video. But know that there are correlations here, and it's worth exploring if you are in therapy. Okay, So with men, they tend to overcompensate. They're trying to prove that they are not like their abusive father, that they're not reliable for the mother to depend on, and also the sexual abuse or repression of if they're gay or something like that, or bisexual or something like that. Okay. So these can be key things of reasons why. If you address these on an emotional level, it can probably make your weight loss journey easier, okay? Because you're going to be dealing more with the root cause of why the weight is on there, because what you need to look at is the weight is a symptom, it's not the problem. It is a symptom of what the problem is. Why did the weight get there in the first place? Well, you had a coping mechanism that you used food to deal with the emotions, okay? For women, it's a little bit different. So for men, they're trying to prove that they're not this. Women, it's much more of a protection mechanism. So this is armor. Okay. So it's to protect from outside threats, whether that's from other women, of not wanting to compete or seem as a threat. Maybe you have an older sibling or something like that, or a coworker, and maybe she's more of the alpha female, and if you get too pretty or you get too attractive, then maybe there were attacks. Same thing with mothers, right? Jealousy and stuff like that, of not liking them get their daughters getting attention, those kind of things, of different ways that you cope with putting that weight on. And of course, sexual abuse or sexual inappropriateness. Okay. So I'm just kind of going through my cards. Gonna have a sip of tea. So, how is this subject matter for everybody? Are you okay with this? I know this is a little bit outside of the scope of things, and I know it's kind of a little bit more of a sensitive subject. If you are hopping in partway through, I will be posting this on YouTube, so you can go watch the replay. So I also want to talk about how weak men respond to sexually attractive women or strong women. Okay, and oftentimes what will happen, especially if she is overweight, obese, anything like that, and he dares to want to approach her, and she shoots him down. And then, of course, oftentimes weak men will react by attacking her back, by saying, well, I didn't want you anyway, you fat bitch, kind of thing. Ask me how I know this. I've had men do that where I wasn't interested in that from them, and then only to have that turned around and attacked back. So that reinforces the need for that protection, because the more there was, because I hadn't dealt with the abuse that I had gone through, so I never, first of all, I never saw myself as attractive, and then second of all, when men did approach, that was an extreme threat for me, and I wondered what the hell was wrong with them. So I would appear defensive, and the thing is I actually wanted a relationship, but I was defensive because I wasn't in that mind frame. So I've had the experience of that often being turned around, that men, because they don't know how to process their own feelings, will end up attacking, and they body shame a woman for being fat. And what I really, really want to get across to men, that men who are strong, men who are emotionally intelligent and able to process their emotions, they've done the inner work, they've done the healing, you can be our greatest assets, our greatest ally, because I can promise you, when you get around a man who is actually healed and actually does the work and allows a woman to feel safe, whether you're in a relationship with them or not, it could be a close proximity of a coworker, a friend, a sibling, whatever, you will feel safe enough that you will not feel the need for this armor. And this is one of the things that's happened to me over the last couple of years, that I have been able to reduce over 100 pounds on me that I was carrying, because I now felt safe and I now felt seen in a way that was healthy. And that really, really helped me. And so when men start body shaming women for the excess weight, and I'm not saying that it's not good to lose weight. It's good to be healthy and be as strong as possible in your body. However, if you are carrying the excess weight, I encourage you to look at these emotional reasons, the root cause of why you're carrying that weight. The weight itself is not the problem. In fact, for women, it's actually the solution. And it's a solution to protect you from certain things that you were not able to deal with. So this seems like an easier way to deter weak men from approaching you, because weak men are not going to be attracted to a woman. They won't see beyond the physical. They will only see the physical and write you off. So it's easy to write off weak men. Now, men that can see beyond that are the ones that are actually will treat you like you're valuable. They will recognize your intelligence. They will recognize your spirit. They will recognize all these other great qualities that you're hiding behind the fat. And that is where you can actually heal quite a bit. So now this is partly because when we think of weight loss techniques, okay, and who went, because the majority of human existence, there wasn't a whole lot of obesity until, I would say, after, I don't know precisely, but I want to say kind of like after the World Wars and the Industrial Revolution and all that kind of stuff, where, women were starting to be in roles, because when men went off to war, they needed people back at home to start working in the factories. And that's when women started working in factories. And they started taking on additional stresses that typically were done by men. And of course, women were able to do that. Wow, who knew, right? But so in going through that, when you think of that, and when they first started to help women lose weight, and it's kind of gone in the exact opposite order. It's like the more they try to help women lose weight, then the more weight we put on, right? Because it's not addressing the root cause. And I believe it's also because most of the time at that time, the only doctors were men. They weren't women. So they're going to deal with it from a male approach on how they help other men lose weight, which is much more of the prove that they are not this, that they are not the rageful father, that they don't have to support the overly emotional, needy mother, and that they're not sexually repressed or sexually LGBTQ kind of thing, right? So in denying that sexual side, oftentimes men will do things like they seem to respond better to, like, don't be lazy, don't be a fat bastard. Like, they can kind of like punch each other into healing and recovery. I don't know, it's kind of weird. It's a guy thing, right? But they kind of do that, and they kind of thrive in that. You take that kind of technique and apply that to a woman, and it just compounds the shame and the fear that they already have, that they'll do well for a little while, and then they just put it all back on. And it's because they're not addressing the root cause of the need of safety, right? So there's different techniques and different ways to deal with that. So, okay. So yeah, number one, men proving that they're not the rageful father, that they're a better man. So men will lose weight to prove that they are better men, that they are stronger. Hey Alfred, welcome back. Thank you. So they'll prove that they are stronger, and they'll do this by suppressing their own rage, and they'll build up their strength, right? The emotional needy mom, you know, a soft man who's carrying excess weight, she might be less likely. And this, of course, is all subconscious. This is not anything that anybody's like, oh, you know, I'm going to consciously do this. This is all subconscious, more innuendo, not innuendo, that's not the right word. Unwritten rules kind of thing of operating procedures, I guess. I'm not explaining that quite as well, but it's these concepts of that there's an emotional component to obesity, and dealing with it is often tied with some sort of sexual abuse. And if you want to even look at animals that you get them spayed or neutered, as soon as you deal with their reproductive organs, they will put on weight. So there's a tie there. There's an emotional and a physiological tie to obesity and sex. Okay? And of course, men who have been sexually abused, they are more prone to putting on weight as well, especially if that abuser was male and they question their sexuality. Okay? So that's basically what I wanted to cover on the obesity side. If you are in therapy, I recommend exploring these kind of areas and where you can possibly seek some additional healing from that and see if those things resonate for you or if they ring true. Okay? All right, so now we're going to get into, grab the eraser. I'm actually fairly pleased with myself. I didn't freak out, stayed calm, cool, collected as I was covering a very difficult topic. And now we're going to get into some more stuff. Yay! All right. Everybody still with me? Okay. Has anybody seen the Seinfeld episode where they have a no-fap contest? So they all, Elaine, George, Jerry, and Kramer, they all decide that they are going to see who can go the longest without masturbating. And the whole premise of it was really interesting, is the longer the guys went without this, the smarter they got, and the more intelligent. And Elaine, the longer she went, the dumber she got. So I always remember that episode, and we're going to talk about this kind of stuff and the concept of men and women and energy exchange. So with men, of course, they have the seed, and that goes to the woman, who is the incubator. Okay? So this concept is a man can provide a seed, and this is also energetically, emotionally as well. And I will get to a point where I can actually translate this concept into business as well, with men and women as well. Okay, so seed provides a seed. So basically that can also be viewed as input. Okay, a woman is going to take that, she's going to 10x it. If a man deposits seed in a woman and then she creates a baby, she creates a whole human being. It takes a little bit of time to kind of go through this, but she can create a human being from what a man provides. Okay? About that. So when we think of energy exchange, it's not just a sexual thing, okay? So in the early days of my healing, of having to start addressing some of the issues, of course, I was single at the time and had to do a lot of healing work. And I had to start looking at how to actually heal the body, and all humans require physical touch. In fact, they've done studies, I believe on monkeys or chimpanzees or something like that, where if that monkey wasn't touched and it was just provided food, water, shelter, but it was never given any physical touch, it actually ended up dying. So there's studies of that we will become sick and die if we are not receiving physical touch. And this is because of an energy exchange between our beings, right? So there is more to sex than just the physical touch. It is also an energy exchange, okay? So when we look at things like the biblical kind of rules of, you know, don't have sex before marriage kind of thing. And it got me thinking, it's like, well, why is that rule in place? And the reason I'm talking about this is because at one time, I would have fought this. I would have went, like, it's no big deal, right? What are you talking about? You know, my past life, before I did a lot of recovery stuff, was probably on the more promiscuous side. Although not to today's standards. You know, technology has definitely elevated this to a whole new level. And I think this is part of why I wanted to actually address it, because I think younger people are experiencing this, and it ends up causing them to feel unfulfilled in life, and therefore unhappy because they are having shallow sexual experiences versus more fulfilling sexual experiences. So part of the healing process in recovering from sexual abuse is addressing some of these issues of healing from this. Okay, so, and I think maybe the way it's explained as a rule of, like, you know, the don't have sex before marriage, I don't think it's actually properly explained in a way that people can understand and resonate, because I know I was told the rule and I'm like, yeah, fuck, whatever. Not doing that. I'm going for other stuff. I wish I had listened. Hindsight's 2020. Okay. So, because I think it is required to be able to develop more of a spiritual connection, more of an energetic connection before you engage in that. Because once you do that, and I'm going to explain why, and it's got concept to do with the seed incubator kind of thing. So hold on to that thought. Okay. So now, typically in biblical things, it's usually focused more on the woman and the woman keeping her virginity and purity and all that kind of stuff before marriage. However, I think this actually should apply more to men. In fact, it's talked about more in the Bible. Not that I'm a whole expert on the Bible, okay? So just some of the stuff that I am aware of. That there's actually more rules for men, and it even talks about men not spilling their seed on the ground kind of thing. So that is talking about masturbation. And I think this is because the seed is actually, when we look at the seed, it is like, it is the life force, right? It has the blueprint / DNA packet kind of thing. Okay? So if a man has excessive sex, whether it's a married partner or not, he has excessive sex, he's going to end up depleting his life force. If he's masturbating, he's definitely depleting his life force and no chance of recharging. Okay? When you connect with a woman, though, it actually is like plugging your phone in to charge it kind of thing. You end up becoming a recharge, because there's an energetic exchange, and whatever the man puts into a woman, he will get back 10 times. Okay? So if you're putting in negativity, whether that's emotionally, spiritually, you're not actually putting out, then it ends up coming back to you tenfold. So, yeah, cover that. Okay, so if you're masturbating to porn, and there's studies of young men with erectile dysfunction, and that there's no reason that they should be, that because they've engaged in this so excessively, they aren't able to hold a proper erection, and then they end up not having fulfilling relationships because of the excess of porn and masturbation. Okay, multiple sexual partners too. Is if you are engaging in multiple sexual partners, then you are not building that soul connection. You are not building that relationship with that person at an energetic, spiritual level, and it will leave you depleted because you're not fully opening her up in order to actually recharge. It's kind of like plugging your phone in for 5 minutes and expecting a full charge. So it will leave you temporarily satisfied. It kind of takes the edge off, but it's kind of the equivalent emotionally and spiritually of eating chips and cheesies, where it kind of gives you a quick fix, but it won't fill you up. Okay? And think of, chips and cheesies compared to like a home-cooked meal. That's definitely more nourishing to your soul, your spirit. Okay? So if you are finding that you are physically drained, that you just don't have the energy, if there is a man that is actually, say he's cheating on his wife and he sees his mistress before, and then he comes home to his wife and she's wanting attention and energy and stuff like that, but he's already depleted. He's at zero. He's got nothing left in the tank. If he tries to engage with his wife, now that depletes him even further. So he's now at a -1 kind of thing. And even though he's connected with her and he may get a recharge, it's only going to bring him back up to like a 0 level. And he still feels depleted and not energized, not replenished, and not connected on a soul level, because whether that was a mistress or porn or whatever it is, that he spent that energy, that life force there before engaging with the woman, where he can actually get back a 10x charge kind of thing. Okay? So it's an energy exchange between a man and a woman, and based on what a man is able to provide and deposits and invests into the woman. So that, of course, applies emotionally. It applies financially. It applies spiritually. Whatever you invest in a woman, she will give back. Now, if you are going through that situation, what's going to happen where you've spent that life force energy in other places, when you go to engage with your wife, even though there's an act that's done, it's the equivalent of chips and cheesies, because you're running on a deficit now. And it ends up being that she, on some energetic level, even if she doesn't know what it is that you're doing, she will know that she's been cheated, that she was given a simulation, basically. Okay? So now I think a lot of this stuff started to come into play, of course, when birth control was invented. So when birth control was invented, then the selection process that women typically up until then had to be much more careful about who she let into her energy, who she allowed to enter into her body, because there was always a risk of having a child. So if the man was not actually a good provider, protector, then less chance of him getting access. But now, without that threat of potential pregnancy, I think women are less selective. Men are not as concerned, because they can eat the chips and cheesies and they aren't worried about whether or not they are going to get a home-cooked meal, right? So, and we talked about how if you're spending that life force energy, you're starting at a zero, you've got an empty tank, you go to your wife or your girlfriend after you've used porn or something like that, and then now you're at a negative balance, right? And even if you do get that recharge, it will not feel like you're satisfied, okay? You'll feel empty still because you are. Okay, right. So I think this whole rule and concept of no sex before marriage was put in place because of knowing that there needs to be some sort of emotional, spiritual connection, even for the men. And I think men get robbed thinking that, you know, that they're the stud if they're out sowing their seeds everywhere, where you're actually spending your life force energy and you're wasting that, okay? So I think, you know, one of the devil's greatest weapons is to make us believe that he doesn't exist, right? So if we look at sex as an energetic exchange, and it's actually a gateway to our souls and being able to connect. When the man actually plugs in to the woman, it is actually a gateway to connecting with God, okay? So that is how powerful and spiritual love can be if it is done in the right way. And you can have that intense connection. And I know there's all kinds of other stuff like, you know, spiritual practices and stuff like that. I'm not well versed on those. I'm not going to try to pretend that I am. But I've always felt that there is this concept of that there is an emotional connection, there is a spiritual connection of being able to reach a higher plane. like I don't know, they call it like, you know, this physical realm is the 3D, and then there's the 5D, and then people talk about the 8D and all that kind of stuff. I'm not going to go into much of that because I only know the bare basics of that. So by all means, go ahead and check out different spiritual practices. And I know there's things like where you can have, whether it's Kama Sutra or breathing techniques or all that kind of stuff. There's different ways that you can connect with your partner on a much more fulfilling way that can really open you up and actually fill up both of you so that it ends up being an energetic charge, right? You know, so that whatever men put into a woman, that they get back even more. So that's why it's important to invest into a good woman, right? And women, what you need to understand is that when you allow a man to enter your body, he is connecting with your soul. He is connecting with your soul on an energetic level, and you are exchanging that energy back. You are giving that energy to him. So if you are giving to a man who is not actually putting into you in the proper ways, you are going to end up feeling drained and depleted and empty. So this is why it's important on both sides to abstain, right? I know. I know, I'm such a killjoy, right? But it will heal you in much deeper levels, and you will actually feel a whole lot happier, because when you do have that energetic connection, that it is powerful and it's fulfilling and it's sustainable, and it brings you such bliss and joy. Okay, so and I think this is why sexual abuse is actually so heinous. Okay, and I'm not saying people who have committed those crimes cannot be rehabilitated. I do believe that they can be, but they have to stop the behavior, okay? Because basically what that perpetrator is doing is they are stealing a piece of innocence from that child. They are stealing a piece of innocence, and it's draining that child's soul, okay? So this is why healing sexual abuse is very important, and being able to understand this energetic connection, this energetic level, because it is crucial for you to be able to heal and explore that and start to replace and heal and pull that energy back to you so that you can heal those wounds. And this is a piece that isn't talked about too often. It definitely wasn't talked about in therapy when I went through therapy, but this is stuff that I had to explore on the outside on my own. Okay. And I think part of the reason why, and I think this was a big part of my healing when I was going through therapy, is that understanding, because we often, if we've experienced that, we tend to blame ourselves, thinking that it was something that we did. And I know for me, it was a big aha, big awareness for me to know that the abusers target children specifically because they are easy to manipulate. And it is like, children are so trusting. They have no choice. They have no choice but to be trusting and hopeful and innocent and expect that love, that care, that connection. And they need that physical touch. So if you have an adult who has, maybe they've been through sexual abuse and they didn't heal, and then they repeat that pattern because they think it's okay, that they went through it and it was fine. And maybe it felt good to them because they needed that physical attention. So understanding that you must break that cycle, you must do that inner work to actually heal so that you can ensure that that cycle doesn't repeat. Okay? And I'm not saying that if you've experienced that you're going to automatically turn into a predator. You can definitely make different choices. But what ends up happening is oftentimes, especially women, if we have been through that, if we don't address it, what may happen is we are attracted to the same type of experiences. And we pull that energy into our lives. And that means we need to definitely heal, because we will unknowingly set up the conditions and the environment that allows for that to happen again. Okay? So, and unfortunately, it's not like these predators or these abusers walk around with signs. In fact, most of them are hidden and they walk among us. And I think if we actually looked at this issue on a deeper level, I don't think we'd actually have enough jails to hold all of the people. Because I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people that have experienced this that have never come forward, never said anything. I know I sure in the hell didn't. As I was coming out of the situations that I was in, the number of abusers that I had experienced, and not one of them has ever been called to justice, called to jail. I did not actually want to go through with that. I did not want to speak about that because I was so afraid of it getting turned back around on me. And I watched things on the news of how women were blamed for what they had experienced, that they were asking for it in somehow. And oftentimes speaking out about the abuse that you've experienced is actually even more damaging than the abuse itself. And I know that has been my experience, to know that you've gone through this and that you dared to speak up and nobody did anything. That was much more damaging to me as a person than the actual physical abuse. Because on some level there was the need for physical touch and there was a lot of neglect. Not intentional, I don't believe, but neglect in the home because my mom was a single mom. So she was often dating different men and things happened and it got pretty bad. And because I was vulnerable, I was alone, and I was a child that needed physical touch and snuggles and hugs and kisses that didn't lead to other things, then that was where things actually ended up going bad. Okay? And some of the abusers They looked very successful on the outside. One was a babysitter who was, he was known as a well-to-do man. I'm not talking like super rich or wealthy. I'm not saying that, because I think in order to get to those super rich, wealthy levels, that you need a high degree of integrity and character. That there's certain criteria that you can get through. Not to say that there isn't, but I think generally people who are super rich and super wealthy do not behave in those ways. They wouldn't have achieved those levels otherwise. So I'm talking about, you know, standard levels of success of, you know, they had a good job, they had a house in the suburbs, they had a good car, they had a nice family life, it looked pleasant on the outside. And there was all kinds of shit and horrors that went on in the inside of the house. And that's what happened in our household. That there was all kinds of things that happened in the background that nobody would suspect. So this is why I say that this stuff is much more prevalent than we suspect. And this is part of why I'm speaking about it, because I'm sure that there's somebody out there that has maybe experienced that, and the shame and the fear of speaking up about what happened. I know for myself, my mom as well, even though she knew, was too terrified to leave, because he was violent and he stalked us, and he would do things like grab the rifle, and there were all kinds of challenges that way. And so, you know, speaking up would be actually very dangerous. And it was only when my uncle and my grandmother came to finally rescue, because I didn't shut up. And apparently I'm still not shutting up, but now I'm being much more open about what I experienced, because I think this actually needs to be addressed. And the challenges is that women, children, they don't have safe places to go. It's not easily accessible, and oftentimes it's more traumatic. And I know my mom, even when we did finally get out and we had to go to therapy, we were told not to talk about what happened, to not express what happened. So we couldn't actually get the healing that we needed, because my mom was so afraid that we would be taken away from her. And so when you're in these situations, you don't think clearly. You end up perpetuating abuse, and you keep the trauma going because of not being able to talk about it. So this is why I'm speaking about these things. I want this stuff to be addressed. I want somebody to know that you can get to safety, that you can reach out for help. You can start to follow these kind of things. I know for myself, alcohol was a big part of the problems in our household. And if it wasn't for the fact that in my 20s, we finally actually went to 12-step groups, we went to therapy. It was out of support for my uncle, but it was actually my mom, my brother, and I that we were finally all together. We actually were able to start healing. And from like 19 until about 32, my entire life was healing and recovery, and self-help, conferences, not webinars, like different events that I'd go to all the time. All of my friends were in healing and recovery. And it was a really, really good growth time. Okay, so while I'm sharing this stuff, so the free content, it's going to be here every day. You can check out my YouTube channel if there's specific questions that you have. I'm doing this because I want to help 1 million people heal past trauma. If we have people that are actually doing the inner work and healing this, we can actually prevent this from ever happening again. We just need to raise the awareness, raise the consciousness in a way that is not threatening, that actually provides healing for both sides to change, right? Because the thing that people don't understand is they want to label the perpetrators and the predators, and I'm not saying that there aren't some that are true monsters, but most of the time these are family people that have made mistakes, that they have done things that they shouldn't have done, and they have no place to reach out for help, to say, fuck, you know what, I did this while I was drinking, I did this while I was high, I did terrible things, but they have to hold it all in, and they can't talk about it, they can't heal, they can't do any of those kind of things. And I'm not condoning their behavior any way, shape, or form, because I truly believe by doing that you are robbing somebody of their innocence, you are robbing them of a piece of their soul, and that is not acceptable, and you will have to hold account for that. But I'm doing this as as a way to reach people that maybe can't afford the coaching, that they can still get some sort of insight, some sort of awareness, some sort of training to help them heal, to know what options are available, because our family didn't know that and we really needed it. So if you found this helpful, please like, comment, share, subscribe, so that this can get out to some people that actually need this, okay? Now, if you are looking for somebody and you find that you like my content, you like how I deal with things, you like how I think I seem to resonate with you, I do offer one-on-one coaching, and that would be at least a 5-figure investment, okay? So this is going to be a higher ticket because I am limiting the number of people that I actually share my energy with, because I know how important it is, and I'm here to help pour into people. And especially if you are dealing with more mother type wounds, where you have either an overly emotional or needy mother, where you had to fulfill a role of a surrogate father, an absent father, an abusive father, that kind of stuff. Those would definitely be areas that I can help with. If you feel that you are called to work with me, you can reach out, message me, and we can hop on a call and see if it's a good fit. If it is, then we can talk about what it looks like to work together. And I will be going over some additional stuff later. One of the benefits of being able to work with me is because you're like, well, Tina, why can't I just go to therapy? And that's a great question. I would highly recommend therapy. I highly recommend 12-step groups. Please go do those things. Where I can come in and help is a lot of times entrepreneurs, business owners, they tend to try to go to therapy, and because they're already at such a higher elevation, a higher level of awareness, that some of the therapists, it can be hit or miss whether or not you get one that actually resonates and actually can help understand the business side of things and what you have to actually put into this, okay? So because of my awareness, my stuff, and what work I've done, my understanding of entrepreneurship, sales, marketing, operations, IT, all of those kind of things. My background was in corporate and transportation and logistics, over 30 years doing that in various capacities, customer fulfillment, all of those things. I have that awareness. So you will not only be able to tap into the healing stuff and being able to have that safe place to talk things out, that I will also understand what it is that you're going through as an entrepreneur and not try to lead you down a road that doesn't actually work in the world of entrepreneurship. So, now, that being said, I have to put this out there because I know sometimes men will want to work with me. And that is fine, because if you are dealing with these mother wounds where you felt that your relationship with your mother was one where it felt like she took more than she gave, then I can provide a nurturing, healing energy to help you with that. And but there are going to be some pretty strong boundaries in place. So please know that it's, you know, because I get a lot of comments and people telling me I'm pretty, telling me all kinds of nonsense. that shit's going to get shut down. I'm here to help you, help guide you. And yes, we are going to talk about sensitive subjects like I just talked about tonight, like sex and healing and all of those kind of things. But you can get that as a safe place and really talk that out. Okay? So, yeah. So now if you are struggling with father wounds, where you are trying to prove that you aren't that rageful, wrathful father, you aren't that, you're so busy trying not to be like your dad that you can't actually do the healing work, then I would highly recommend a coach. His name is Phil Bohol. Definitely check him out. And in fact, in the month of February, as of right now, I think he's going live. You can check him out. I would highly recommend. This man has such a high level of integrity. I've had him as a coach for confidence and sales. I would recommend him, no holds barred. So please check him out. Check out his YouTube channel. If you're a man that is dealing with father issues, or even a woman that's dealing with father issues, definitely he will heal that perspective of seeing that, of what a good healed man looks like. Okay, so guys, with that, I'm going to wrap it up tonight. I will be back on at 9 p.m. Eastern time. I'm going to share more of my own personal story, a bit more of the timelines, and so that way you have some real life examples of what I've been through. Maybe some of those feelings that I felt back then will resonate with you, that you'll be able to connect and see that where I was, because a lot of times people look at me and they think, oh, well, it's easy for you. It's like, no, I had to work really hard to get here. And some days, like yesterday, the dark times still come back. And knowing how to get through those is really critical in your healing and being able to change and weather the storms of change, because as you go through the healing journey, as you start to become happier, you're going to experience these like backlashes that pull you back, and you're like, oh, why did I even do this stuff? Like it's so hard, it's so painful. But if you have somebody that can help you navigate the path, I've been through this many, many times, and definitely want to share that experience with you. So come back at 9 p.m. tonight and we will talk again. And if you have any questions, or if anything came up from this talk, then we can go over that in my talk tonight at 9. All right, take care. Have a great day. Bye.